Yodh, Yodh. That's a better transliteration than the Yodh. It's not Yod, which I sometimes mistakenly refer to it as. It's Yodh, Yodh, like nun. Not noon, but nun. Not Yod, but Yodh, Yodh. And Yodh is by far the smallest of the Hebrew letters. Let's review. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet. And Tet, I didn't show you how to write this, but this is one of my favorite letters to write. I could write that all day. Tet. It's one of my favorite letters to write. Comes right before one of the maybe simplest letters to write. It's like the Vav. Remember the Vav? It's like that, but it's simpler. It doesn't have the leg. It's just the Vav without dropping the leg all the way down. It's a little jot. Remember in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, not a jot or a tittle will be removed from the law. The jot is one way to refer to the Yodh, the Yodh. So it's small, but it packs one of the most powerful spiritual punches of all the letters. It's referred to as the little that holds a lot. It's like an acorn that contains within it the potential to become a massive oak tree. It's like an atom, a tiny atom that the naked eye can't even see, but has within it atomic nuclear power, nuclear energy. The letter is associated with the hand. The hand. The Hebrew word for hand is Yod, Yod, which begins with the letter Yod. So even the small letters association with the hand suggest the immense power that can be communicated through a single touch, a tiny, gentle touch. In Psalm 119, verse 73, the poet says, your hands, Yadecha, your hands have made me and fashioned me. Give me understanding that I may learn your commandments. Remember, the psalm is addressing God the whole time, except for those first few verses in the Aleph stanza. Everything else after that is addressing God. Your hands have made me and fashioned me. Give me understanding that I may learn your commandments. The hand of God is what made us and fashioned us and formed us. The Hebrew word for form is yatsar, which also begins with the letter Yod. We are made in the likeness of God. We are made in the image of God. We're made in the image of the one whose name is written as 4 Hebrew letters. This is known as the Tetragrammaton, the 4-lettered word that is the most powerful of all 4-letter words. So powerful that we don't even know how to pronounce it. And actually, that's how the rabbis prefer it. The rabbis don't even know for sure how to pronounce it because it's too powerful. It's Yod, He, Vav, He. And I said we're made in the image of the one whose name is spelled like this. Some even write the name like this. Yod He Vav He, almost like a person. The arms, the legs. Now remember what these other letters mean. We've already learned these other letters. Yod is the hand, in this case the hand of God as it's referred to in the psalm. He, do you remember what He is? That's right, it's the window, the window. And Vav, what is Vav? Vav is that nail, that connector of 2 worlds. So the name of God, the 4-letter name of God, which is, sometimes pronounced Yahweh or Yahweh. It's also where we get the word Jehovah, but there's no J sound in Hebrew, so that's not accurate. But it could be Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahoo, Yah. We don't know. But that word, we do know the letters. We just don't know the vowels. The letters, the consonants, are Yod, hand, Hey, window, Vav, connect, Hey, window. Hand, window, connect, window. Interesting. Think about that. Think about God as a hand reaching forth from one window to connect to us through another window. God as a hand reaching forth from the window of heaven to connect to us through the window of earth. If we reach out in response to God and allow ourselves to be touched by the most energizing and life-giving touch of all. Think of that famous Michelangelo painting in the Sistine Chapel, the creation of Adam, in which God reaches forth from the heavenly realm, the heavenly window, to touch and connect and give life to humanity. Humanity who is also reaching forth from the earthly window. Hand, window, connect, window. There's a book called The Sistine Secrets by a Jewish author, Rabbi Benjamin Blech, and he argues fairly convincingly that Michelangelo incorporated Hebrew letters and secret Jewish meanings into the frescoes of the Sistine Chapel. I don't know if he had this Yod He Vav He interpretation in mind, but it's fascinating to consider. As the psalmist in Psalm 119 says, God's hands have made us and fashioned us. As I said in the previous video on the letter Tet, original blessing came before original sin. We were created as good. We were created as very good. Made in the image of God, made in the imago Dei. That image is still within us. Although we have defaced it and corrupted it through our sin and selfishness, our original identity is still very good. Many theologians have tried to figure out what exactly is the imago Dei. They've tried to answer the question, what exactly does it mean to be made in God's image? Does God's image refer to our ability to reason, our inclination to be creative, our capacity to love? Those are all good answers, and probably all true to a degree. The letter Yod invites us to see the imago Dei, the image of God within us, as the plurality of selves within our own self. And actually, the last verse in this stanza, verse 80, let my heart be tamim, which means undivided. In the Psalter in the prayer book, it's sound, but a better translation is undivided, thus implying that there's this multiplicity, this plurality within the heart. The great Christian theologian St. Augustine tried to explain the mystery of the Holy Trinity, one God as three persons, by using the analogy of a person's mind. A person's mind, which has the ability to do three things: to remember, to understand, and to desire, or to will. Three capabilities and one mind. And so in a sense, he saw that as maybe the imago Dei within us. The imago Dei, the image of the triune God. Since we are made in the image of a triune God, the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, which is diversity within unity, perhaps we too have plurality within our unique selves. I think that would make sense and resonate with our experiences. And perhaps we have three different aspects or three different selves within our one self. Or perhaps we have more. I'm realizing I am over 10 minutes in this Yod video, but I'm going to keep going, inspired by the number 10. Because the numerical value of the letter Yod is 10. Remember, Yod is hand. The Yadim, the hands. We have 10 fingers on our hands. 10 is also a very important number in Judaism. There are 10 commandments, 10 plagues, and 10 shows up quite often throughout the extra-biblical Jewish literature, the Talmud and Midrash. And in the ancient book, I shared this before, Sefer Yetzirah, I mentioned this in a previous video, the book of creation, or actually the book of formation. Remember I said to form is Yatzar, Yetzirah means the book of formations. This is perhaps the most ancient book of Jewish mysticism, unless you're counting the Christian scriptures, which I tend to do. And in this book, God is described as having 10 manifestations or emanations. These are referred to as sphirot. And since we are made in God's image, the 10 sphirot correspond to different parts of us. Let me show you. You may have seen this image before. Top one is the Keter, the crown. Bottom was the Malkut, and then we have wisdom, understanding, we have beauty, we have compassion and restraint. These are all different emanations of God. And these form what is called the tree of life, because they all connect to each other. They all emanate from God, who is beyond. And that forms what is called the tree of life. As I said at the beginning, Yodh is like an acorn, which contains within it a mighty tree. These emanations also correspond to different parts of the human body, kind of like chakras. This symbol is at the heart of Kabbalah, and you'll see versions of this in books on Kabbalah, and you also see versions of this symbol with Hebrew letters written in between these connections here. Actually, one of my favorite windows at Christchurch Eureka has these circles with arms connecting each other that kind of reminds me of the tree of life. It's the window that has at the top the Star of David, very Jewish symbol. So the letters are associated with the relationships between these emanations. Now this all gets fairly complicated rather quickly, and this all gets above my pay grade, so to speak. If you think a three-personed God is hard to understand, just try grasping a God with 10 different emanations. The main point is that the letter Yod, which is clearly a tiny letter with enormous meaning, invites us to see the divine spark, that tiny divine spark within ourselves, within we who have been touched by God's hand and made in God's image. Astrophysicists say that all the billions and billions of galaxies that make up the universe all came from one infinitely small point that exploded at the Big Bang. That's the Yod. That's the Yod. And that's within each of us, that inner spark of infinite possibility and potential. Your hands have made me and fashioned me. Give me understanding that I may learn your wisdom, that I may learn your commandments. Give us understanding, Lord, that we may learn to see within ourselves that sacred place, that virgin point, where we have been touched by the eternal triune God whose light emanates in wondrous ways.